Milwaukee Bucks caught everyone off guard by firing their rookie head coach Adrian Griffin despite ranking second in the East. And if you read all the articles and listened to all the talking heads, you might think it was simply that they just couldn't get more effort on defense and Griffin couldn't figure out how to get Giannis and Dame to fit together smoothly. But those are casual takes, and the reality is a lot more complex and nuanced, which is why I took a deep dive into the footage to figure out exactly what went wrong. It's easy to see at first glance how their defensive rating rank has fallen quite a bit from their normal lofty standards, and the first place to examine is how they defend the pick and roll. Here's an interesting stat. They've been pretty bad at defending this for the past 4 years, and currently they're giving up more threes per game in the NBA than all but the Celtics. And it's mainly because of a coverage that many thought Adrian Griffin wanted to go away from. For years under head coach Mike Budenholzer, Brook Lopez would drop deep into the paint while defending the pick and roll and try and lure the ball handler into the mid-range. It was reported that Adrian Griffin wanted to go away from drop coverage and have Brook Lopez come up higher to defend the pick and roll. It seemed like everyone thought this was a big issue to start the season, but I can tell you I saw plenty of drop coverage through the first 4 games to make me wonder, what was everyone talking about? In the first game of the season versus Philly, check how low Lopez drops as they get exactly what they want. On this pick and roll, maybe you could say he's a step higher than he used to be near the elbow, and when Connaughton is slow chasing around, you can see how wide open Kelly Oubre is. The truth is, Lopez never stopped dropping in the pick and roll, and the Bucks continue to give teams wide open shots when there is no support for the ball handler's man. Teams have been exploiting this as the Bucks have defended the pick and roll more than any team in the NBA, although it's still way less than the percentage of time from last season, but I suspect that will continue to change as more and more teams have guys that can hit a lot of threes off the dribble when presented with very little resistance in front of them. The problem the Bucks have with Lopez is that every so often he will step up to try and stop the guard from lighting them up. But now you've got a big guy who's slow of foot trying to handle a speedy guard in the perimeter, and this is what should make Bucks fans concerned come playoff time. The real difference in defensive schemes is what Griffin did to address an issue I had with the Bucks defense the past 5 years. They would routinely help one pass away off the corner to wall off the rim. While last year was an anomaly, you can see how they'd be at the top of the league at giving up the most wide open three-point attempts, and it always made me feel like they were vulnerable come playoff time against good teams with multiple snipers. Since the 2020 playoffs, the Bucks are 10-16 when the other team hit more threes than they did. And if you're giving up open threes both out top, around the ball screen, and then in the corner as well, it makes it tough to win. Here's how the Bucks would defend off the corners in years past. Notice how the defender is standing on the block in early help to dissuade the drive to the basket altogether. They would then take their chances with the easy kick and hope that the closeout had an effect on the shot. This made it harder to score on them in the paint, and for the most part, their defensive rating was good, although you can see 2 of those years weren't quite as elite as their reputation. Now let's look at this year. I caught Brook Lopez seemingly getting upset with the way he was being coached on defense a few times. You can hear the bench yelling to him to double, even though there's no one to help on his man who gets the layup as Lopez stares down the bench. Same game with Connaughton not helping off the corner like in years past. Lopez has to contest the driver and it leaves his man wide open for the dunk, much to the chagrin of Lopez. And then on the weak side, the Raptors pick on Dame, with Lopez wanting to hang back to prevent the pass to the low block. But you can hear Griffin yelling at Lopez to get up higher.
You may not need him tonight.
And this lets Poeltl pass it right over to him for the score. Check Lopez's reaction, and his frustration began to boil over on this play. Notice how Beasley stayed at home on the shooter in the corner. This allowed the driver to get right to the basket for the layup instead of having an extra defender to stop the ball. You can almost see him saying, "See, I told you this scheme doesn't work." Now, the real culprit is Giannis's poor closeout, and my defensive philosophy has always been to not help one pass away off the corner unless it's a bad shooter. Staying at home on the perimeter is a very solid defensive strategy, but if not played properly, then you're liable to give up points in the paint, and that is the other, more severe issue. They are 4th in opponents' points in the paint, and nowhere is that more apparent than in the pick and roll as well. While Lopez is blocking almost 3 shots a game, it's not enough to overcome the myriad of attacks that go right at him. He's still formidable and can dissuade people from taking shots, But allowing easy penetration into the lane and giving up this many paint shots isn't sustainable, and you won't see their defensive rating get better unless they can get more pressure on the shooters. Aside from Lopez in the drop, whenever Bobby Portis is in there, he will hedge high in a throwback to an earlier era of pick-and-roll defense. And this method of defending clearly isn't working out for the Bucks. It pulls Portis out of position, and the ball moves too quickly via the pass for him to catch up. With Portis on the floor and Lopez on the bench, the Bucks' defensive rating would rank them last in the NBA, and the way they're hedging pick and rolls is a big reason why. I can see how frustrating it could be for a team used to a certain amount of success to try something that's new, and if it doesn't work right away, it becomes demoralizing as an almost endless stream of layups marching to the hoop. Don't get me wrong, what Griffin wanted to do isn't a bad idea, but this is a results-based league, and after 5 or 6 games of this, the players probably turned on him. For what it's worth, they did turn to a zone defense a lot more than last year, and they ranked 6th best, so this was working, and perhaps Griffin should have went to it even more to stop the onslaught of points in the paint and wide open three-pointers. Any criticism of the offense could certainly feel unwarranted considering they had the second highest offensive rating in the league this year, which was 6 points higher than the previous all-time high we'd ever seen in the NBA. I went through close to 1,000 clips, and I did observe some spacing issues that could have been frustrating to Damian Lillard. There were times when Giannis was on the weak side wing where he won't command any gravity and his man can just stand near the nail, removing the possibility of a Lillard drive altogether. I got the sense that the Lillard-Lopez pick and roll was a source of excessive turnovers as they struggled to get in sync with each other, but some of these miscues are a bit random and might just be a little fluky. Another thing I noticed was that the spacing along the baseline would get clogged when they tried to set a pin down for a cutter while a pick and roll was going on out top. This is a popular play, something the Warriors get a lot of mileage out of, but for the Bucks, it allowed the defense to clog up the middle while having one defender easily guard 2 guys. This wasn't something I saw the Bucks do a lot of last year, and if you're looking for new things that the players don't feel confident in, I guess you could point to that. But I will stress, their offense was elite, and so was their record, so you'd be hard-pressed to point to anything on this end that led to Griffin's dismissal. That said, his top assistant Terry Stotts quit before the season even started, and this had to have been a red flag. Having been Lillard's coach for 9 years in Portland, this could not have been a good situation between the head coach and his point guard. There were examples of confusion on the court like this play, where Lopez inexplicably cuts in front of Middleton, who lets him have it, and after going back and forth, more exasperation towards Griffin from Lopez. They do an excellent job to scram Dame out of the mismatch down low, but you can see he has no idea where he's supposed to go as they give up another open 3. Watch Lopez turn to Beasley incredulously as he switched instead of trailed the ball handler, giving up a wide open shot. Here's Lopez angrily telling Cam Payne to get on the weak side, which means he's foolishly holding the ball out to get it stolen. You can see Griffin calling for Giannis to run a 2-man game with Dame, but instead he's ISOing on a crowded left side, Lopez is smashing into people, and Giannis is taking the worst shot he can take with 12 seconds on the shot clock. Here's a wide open Dame coming up for the handoff. Giannis opts to keep it and gets his cookies snatched. And then Giannis wanted Dame to come back for the handoff, but when Dame turns that down, it turns into another terrible ISO and a brick from 18 feet while Brook Lopez is pointing it out. And the fact that the team felt the need to bring in Doc Rivers to consult so early in the season also indicates that there was some sort of knowledge deficit, be it player-coach communication or X's and O's. Either way, there might be some scrutiny from other coaches over Doc's willingness to get involved in the situation, seeing as though he ended up taking Griffin's job within a month. But here we are, with the second half to get things sorted out on defense from a coach whose defensive record in Philly was a bit up and down, and who has a reputation of failing in big moments of the playoffs. If they go back to the Budenholzer style of defense, which tended to give up open 3s but limit points in the paint, it's possible their ranking climbs back above average. But I fear there are too many holes with this roster to see them getting past the other top teams in the East.